the ruthless man in your heart. If you asked a man in Renaissance Italy who truly understood women, he would not point to a poet or a lover. He would point to a politician, a man exiled for being too clever with power, a man feared not for his charm, but for his insight into human nature. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. Now pause for a moment. You might be thinking, what does a cold-blooded political strategist have to do with love after all? Machiavelli was not a romantic. He never wrote love poems or danced under the stars. His world was filled with betrayal, ambition, and ruthless calculations. But maybe, just maybe, that is exactly why we need to listen to him. Because love, despite all its poetry and passion, can be brutal. Behind every broken heart is a war lost. Behind every toxic relationship is a miscalculated alliance. And behind every man who says, "I should have known better," there is a Machiavellian truth waiting to be discovered. Imagine this. You walk into a room. She smiles. Your heart skips a beat. You tell yourself it is fate. You believe the connection is real, deep, maybe even divine. But somewhere, in the corner of your mind, another voice whispers. A voice that doesn't care about butterflies or first kisses. A voice that asks, "What does this cost you?" That voice is Machiavelli. He would tell you that emotions are tools, not truths. That attraction is a currency, and that a woman's value, just like a prince's ally, must be judged not by how she makes you feel, but by how she behaves when the storms hit. You think you choose her, but more often than not, you are chosen. Chosen by a pattern you don't understand. Chosen by wounds you haven't healed. Chosen by a mask she wears so well that even you call it real. Machiavelli's brilliance was not in controlling others. It was in seeing them clearly, stripped of illusion. And that, right there, is what makes his thinking terrifying and liberating. Because when you see people as they are, not as you wish them to be, you finally start to choose for yourself. This video is not about turning you into a manipulator. It is about making sure you are not manipulated. It is not about teaching you to play games, but to stop being played. And the truth is, many men walk into relationships like soldiers without armor. Hearts wide open, minds asleep. They think being good is enough. They think loving deeply will protect them. But Machiavelli would shake his head. Love, in his eyes, is not protection. It is exposure. It is a battlefield where those who do not prepare lose. And so today, we are going to explore a different way to look at women, at love, and at your role in all of it. We will use the mind of a man who saw through kings and traitors to help you see through something far more dangerous, your own blind spots in love. Because if Machiavelli were alive today, he would not write dating advice. But he would recognize the battlefield, and he would give you the only thing that ever saved any man in a war strategy. So if you have ever loved someone who hurt you, if you have ever felt confused by your own heart, if you have ever asked, "Why do I keep choosing wrong?" then this, my friend, is for you. Let us begin. Enchanted by emotion, the trap of the heart. He is the man who works hard, who builds himself piece by piece. He trains his body, sharpens his mind, maybe even succeeds in his career. He walks with confidence, speaks with clarity. But when it comes to love, something shifts. The sharpness dulls and the logic fades. And the man who once conquered meetings and deadlines now stands frozen, confused, in front of a woman's smile. Why? Because in the realm of emotion, many men enter blindfolded. Not because they are weak, but because they are untrained. Because while they were taught to chase dreams, They were never taught how to recognize illusions. They were told to be strong, but never warned that the greatest threats come dressed as softness. Too many men choose women based on the surface beauty, charm, chemistry. And while none of those are wrong, they become dangerous when they are the only things considered. He meets her. She is stunning. She laughs at his jokes. She says all the right things. And something inside him whispers, she is different. But is she? Or is she simply wearing the perfect mask? This is where the trap begins. The modern man, despite all his intelligence, often falls for what feels familiar. Not because it is healthy, but because it echoes something buried, a wound, a memory, a longing, and he doesn't see it as a pattern, he sees it as fate. He believes he understands her, that she gets him in ways no one else does. But this is the illusion of premature intimacy, a rush of connection that feels deep but is built on projection. He is not loving her. He is loving the image he painted of her in his mind. Picture a maze. Its walls are made of emotion, nostalgia, desire, fear of loneliness. The man walks in, thinking he knows the way, but every turn looks familiar. Every dead end feels like déjà vu, and the more he walks, the more lost he becomes. This is the emotional maze of modern dating. He says, she is not like the others. But what he means is, she triggers something I haven't yet understood. Take the man who meets the life of the party. She's fun, spontaneous, intoxicating. He's drawn in like a moth to flame. But months later, he finds himself exhausted, constantly on edge, never sure if she's truly with him or already halfway gone. Or the man who falls for the quiet, mysterious type. He mistakes silence for depth, distance for strength, only to realize later, she was never emotionally available. He just filled in the blanks with what he wanted to see. In the dating world today, these traps are everywhere. The dating apps that reduce human souls to swipes. The curated profiles that sell fantasy. The speed at which people say, I feel a connection before they even know each other's last name. In this chaos, emotion becomes the drug, and men become the addicts. They seek validation, approval. That moment when she says, you're different, and they hold on to it like a trophy, not realizing they've just handed over their power. And in relationships, the pattern continues. A man ignores red flags because he is afraid of starting over. He tolerates disrespect because he mistakes it for passion. He gives too much, too soon, because he thinks love means sacrifice. No one told him that real love requires standards, not surrender. Even in marriage, men can fall into the emotional trap. They wake up years later wondering where the spark went, only to realize it was never a spark, it was a fire they kept fueling alone. And by then they are entangled in responsibilities, children, shared debts. Leaving feels impossible. Staying feels unbearable. So they numb, they shrink, they lose themselves, and the truth is most men are not broken and they are simply unarmed. They walk into the most emotionally complex arena, romantic relationships, without tools, without training, and often without a clue. And the world mocks them when they fail, calls them weak, calls them simps. But the real issue is not their emotion, it's their lack of strategy around it. Emotions are real, yes, but they are not always right, and they certainly should not be the compass for decisions that shape your entire future. So ask yourself this: are you loving her because she aligns with your vision, your values, your purpose? Or are you loving her because she gave you a feeling you didn't know how to generate on your own? Are you choosing her with intention? Or did you just get swept up in the moment, like a man pulled into a river without knowing how to swim? And perhaps the most dangerous lie of all. Do you believe she will complete you because no one will? And the longer you believe that, the easier it is to fall into traps disguised as magic. So here we are, you, standing in the middle of the emotional maze. Around you, echoes of laughter, promises, and déjà vu. Every path seems familiar. Every wall whispers, she might be the one. But before you take another step, stop and ask the one question that could change everything. Are you in love or are you surrendering? The shattered heart, when the wrong choice breaks you. Let me tell you a story. His name was Daniel. 37, successful, respected, the kind of man who planned every step of his life like a chessboard. Except when it came to love. He met her at a conference. Elegant, articulate, confident. She spoke to his ambition, reflected his dreams. Within weeks, he told his friends, I think she's the one. Within months, they moved in together. Within a year, they were married. Fast forward 3 years. Daniel was sitting alone in an empty apartment, staring at a wedding photo that no longer made sense. She had left. No warning, no discussion. Just a note on the counter and a lawyer's number. The woman who once promised forever had quietly slipped away, taking half his savings and, worse, all his belief in himself. But what truly broke him wasn't the loss. It was the confusion. The questions that never stopped replaying in his mind. Was it all fake? Did I miss the signs? Was I ever really loved? This is what happens when you choose blindly. Not because you are a fool, but because you never prepared to see. When you walk into love with your heart wide open but your mind asleep, what you feel might be real, but what you ignore is just as real. Now meet Marcus. He fell for a woman who made him feel needed. She had just come out of a toxic relationship. He became her rock, her savior, her emotional support. He paid her rent, helped her get therapy, introduced her to new friends. He thought love was about giving, and he gave everything until she didn't need him anymore. One morning, she told him she had met someone else, someone exciting, someone who didn't remind her of her past. Marcus was devastated, not just because he lost her, but because he realized she never saw him as a man, only as a stepping stone. He didn't lose to another man. He lost to a version of himself he thought was enough. That is the silent grief of the modern man. He doesn't scream. He doesn't break things. He just shuts down. He disappears into himself, into work, into silence, because he doesn't know what just happened. He followed the script: be kind, be supportive, be there, and still ended up alone. This is not about blaming women. It's about understanding reality. A reality where good intentions are not enough. Where being a nice guy is not a shield. Where love, without discernment, is a gamble with devastating odds. When a man chooses the wrong woman, it's not always because she's evil. Sometimes, she's just wrong for him. And that mismatch, over time, becomes a poison. One that erodes his purpose, his peace, his power. Let's talk about what comes after. Self-doubt. It's subtle at first. He questions whether he's lovable, whether he's enough. Then it becomes deeper. He stops trusting others, stops trusting himself. The next time he meets someone and he holds back, not out of wisdom but fear, he becomes suspicious of affection, dismissive of kindness. Emotionally guarded, not because he's healed, but because he's still bleeding. Now layer that with the societal fallout. Divorce rates climbing. Financial losses that take years to recover. children caught between broken homes, learning to love through wounds, men walking away from relationships altogether, retreating into work, into isolation, into numbness. Not because they hate love, but because they no longer believe in their ability to navigate it. And what hurts the most, he knows she's moved on. She posts pictures, smiling, traveling, living. Meanwhile, he's rebuilding himself from scratch, one painful piece at a time. And the world looks at him and says, "Man up." But how do you man up when your blueprint for love just exploded? Here's the truth. You didn't lose because she was bad. You lost because you had no strategy. You played an emotional game without knowing the rules. You walked into a storm without checking the weather. And when it all collapsed, it wasn't just your heart that broke, it was your sense of direction. The heart shatters most violently when the mind never saw it coming. Because it's not just the pain of the moment, it's the betrayal of the dream. You didn't just lose her, you lost the future you imagined. The home, the family, the peace. And now, you question everything. Was it real? Was I stupid? Am I even capable of choosing right? But maybe the harshest truth is this. You were not betrayed by the woman. You were betrayed by the hope you built without foundation, by the fantasy you wrapped around her, by the blind faith that said, love will figure it out, while ignoring all the signs that screamed otherwise. That fantasy, it's seductive. It tells you that love is magical, that the right person will just feel right. But love is not magic. It is management. It is vision. It is clarity. And when you build it on emotion alone, it collapses like a house made of cards. So before you say she broke you, ask yourself, did you ever prepare for this? Did you ever stop to truly evaluate her character? Did you ever ask if her chaos was something you could carry or just something you romanticized? Because heartbreak is not always a sign you were wronged. Sometimes it is a consequence of refusing to see. And now, as you pick up the pieces, you have a choice. You can numb, you can blame, or you can learn. Because the next time you stand at the edge of love, you will remember this moment, and you will decide not just who you want, but who you refuse to become again. The Roman strategy of love, Machiavelli's blueprint for the heart. Niccolo Machiavelli is often remembered with suspicion. His name alone has become shorthand for manipulation, cunning, even evil. But if you look deeper past the surface judgments and modern misinterpretations, you'll find something extraordinary. Machiavelli wasn't just a political thinker. He was a master of human nature, a man who understood how people rise, fall, betray, submit, seduce, and survive. And while he never wrote about love directly, everything he wrote about power applies to it, because love, like politics, is a game of influence, a game of choices, a kingdom you must govern or be ruled by. In The Prince, Machiavelli offers brutal truths about ruling a state. But if you read between the lines, what he's really teaching is how to deal with people, how to spot their patterns, protect your interests, and create outcomes that serve your vision. Let's take those lessons and walk them into your romantic life. Principle 1. Human nature changes. Never trust fixed emotions. One of Machiavelli's core beliefs was that people are not consistent. They shift. They adapt to incentives. They act one way when they need you and another when they don't. In love, we want to believe the opposite. We crave consistency. We want to hear, "I'll always feel this way," and believe it. But that is not how people work. Emotions are weather. They change. They pass. And when you build your entire sense of security on someone else's emotional state, you're living in a house built on fog. Machiavelli would warn you never make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. She may be head over heels today, but how does she behave when you're not at your best? When life gets hard, when your value to her isn't obvious if you want a love that lasts. Choose not based on how she feels about you now, but based on how she behaves when her feelings shift. Principle 2. Respect power. The one who can affect you most can hurt you most. In politics, power is everything. And in love, it's the same, just dressed in romance. The person you give emotional power to, the one whose words can make or break your day, holds a throne in your life. And that throne should never be handed over without scrutiny. Machiavelli understood that you never give power to someone who doesn't have skin in the game, someone who has nothing to lose, someone who enjoys your vulnerability but never offers their own. Ask yourself this: does she honor the power she has in your life, or does she use it carelessly, manipulatively, silently? Because the one who can lift you highest can also drop you the hardest. And Machiavelli would remind you, in matters of power, trust is not given. It is earned, tested, and constantly reevaluated. Principle 3. Real value always trumps appearance. Machiavelli warned leaders not to be seduced by beautiful words or charming appearances. He said the wise prince looks not at how someone presents themselves, but at how they act under pressure. In love, this is critical. Anyone can be sweet on a first date. Anyone can write a romantic message. But what does she do when you're sick? When you fail? When you succeed beyond her comfort zone? Real character reveals itself not in how someone makes you feel in the moment, but in what they do when you need them most. Love is not in the highlight reels, it's in the quiet, often inconvenient moments. Machiavelli would say a prince who chooses an advisor for their elegance alone is a fool, and a man who chooses a partner for her image, not her essence, is building a throne on sand. Principle 4. Anticipate chaos before it arrives. Machiavelli advised rulers to think ahead, not just to respond to crises, but to anticipate them. He said that wise men see problems coming from afar and prepare long before others even recognize the threat. Apply this to love. Don't just react to red flags, predict them. Notice patterns early. Watch how she treats others, not just you. How does she talk about her past relationships? Her parents, her enemies? Because how she speaks about others is how she will one day speak about you. Ask yourself if everything went wrong, if you lost your job, your status, your looks, would she stay? Would she support you or abandon you? Machiavelli would nod solemnly and say, "Those who do not prepare for storms will drown in them." Principle 5. The right partner makes you stronger, not smaller. This is perhaps the most overlooked truth. In Machiavelli's world, alliances either made your kingdom safer or more vulnerable. A bad ally didn't just slow you down, they put you at risk. In love, it's the same. The woman you choose should add to your power, not drain it. She should challenge you. Yes, but in ways that sharpen, not belittle. She should bring peace to your mission, not drama to your days. You should feel more like yourself around her, not less. Too many men end up in relationships where they are constantly explaining themselves, walking on eggshells, compromising their vision just to avoid conflict. That is not love. That is self-erasure. Machiavelli would call it a strategic failure, because a true queen does not compete with your purpose. She aligns with it. She does not make you question your strength. She reminds you of it. So how do all these principles connect? Simple. Love and politics both operate on the same battlefield, human nature. The emotions are different, but the structure is the same. Influence, power, alignment, trust, vision. These are the currencies of both kingdoms. And you, whether you realize it or not, are a ruler. Your life is your empire. Your energy is your army. Your values are your laws. And the woman you choose to bring into that empire must be vetted like an alliance, because she will either protect your kingdom or weaken it from the inside. Remember Machiavelli's famous quote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved, if one must choose." Now in relationships, you don't need to be feared, but you must be respected. And respect is born not from dominance, but from clarity, from knowing your worth, your limits, and your direction. Love without strategy is chaos. Love without awareness is war. And the man who forgets that ends up overthrown by his own emotions. So, the next time you feel the rush of attraction, pause. Remember this. You are not just falling in love. You are negotiating a treaty. You are granting access to your kingdom. You are choosing a co-ruler who will shape your future. Choose wisely. Govern wisely. Because even in love, the prince who sees clearly rules longer. The strategic map for a rational heart. Love without thinking is like sailing without a compass. You may feel the wind, enjoy the view, but when the storm comes, you will have no idea where you're going or how to survive. Now that we've seen the pain of emotional blindness and the power of Machiavellian awareness, it's time to translate all of that into something practical. A map, a set of rules, a way forward. Here are 4 principles, simple, powerful, and absolutely essential for any man who wants to love without losing himself. First, observe actions, not words. Anyone can say the right thing. Words are cheap. Especially in the beginning, when everyone is trying to impress, to win, to attract. But what someone does consistently is their truth. You need to become a student of behavior. Watch how she treats others when they have nothing to offer her, how she responds to minor frustrations, how often her promises are backed by action. Does she follow through? Does she apologize when wrong? Is her kindness just a performance or part of her character? Love what you see, not what you hear. Second, watch how she reacts to your vulnerability and your power. This one is critical. A woman's true nature isn't revealed when you're charming her. It's revealed when you're weak or when you win. When you're down, does she support you or secretly judge you? Does she offer help or withdraw affection? When you're successful, does she celebrate or compete? Does she uplift you or try to bring you back down to a version of you she's more comfortable with? The right partner doesn't change when your circumstances do. She remains aligned with your vision, whether you're rising or rebuilding. Third, take your time. Observe beyond the honeymoon phase. Most people show their best selves in the first 3 months. They are patient, attentive, generous. But that version is not always sustainable. Time reveals what charm conceals. So don't rush into labels. Don't rush into commitment. Let time do the filtering for you. Watch how she behaves when she's not getting her way, how she handles routine, how she treats you when there's nothing to gain. The goal isn't perfection, it's consistency. As Machiavelli might say, a wise prince does not sign a treaty before reading the terms twice. Fourth, ask yourself, does she make me stronger or smaller? Every relationship is either a multiplier or a divider. She's either adding to your energy, your confidence, your mission, or she's draining it. You'll know by how you feel after spending time with her. Do you feel focused or foggy, energized or exhausted, inspired or uncertain? Your partner should not be your project. She should be your ally, someone who challenges you, yes, but never in a way that undermines your worth. Now let's build a simple checklist you can use. Every time you're dating someone or evaluating a connection, ask these 5 questions. 1. Does her behavior match her words consistently? How does she respond when I show weakness or strength? 3. What is she like when no one is watching? 4. Has her character changed after the first 3 months? 5. Do I feel more like myself or less when I'm with her? Rate each question from 1 to 5. Not for judgment, but for clarity. Patterns always reveal themselves. You just have to be paying attention. Also, do this before your next serious relationship. Write down 5 non-negotiable values, not preferences, values. Things like honesty, emotional maturity, accountability, respect for your mission, consistency. Then, on every date, listen for those values not in what she says, but in how she shows up. Machiavelli would advise his prince to guard his gates carefully. You must do the same with your heart, because love is not the absence of pain. It is the presence of discernment, now a warning. Loving is not the problem. The problem is loving without direction, without standards, without preparation. That kind of love becomes a gamble, and more often than not, men lose more than just their hearts, they lose themselves. Never forget, emotions are meant to be felt, but not blindly followed. Being romantic does not mean being reckless. Being open does not mean being undefended. Being committed does not mean being conquered. And here is the image I want you to leave with. A nation without a constitution falls into chaos. A man without principles in love becomes a nation with no law. So write your constitution. Build your strategy. Stand guard at the gate of your own kingdom, because the right woman does not just love you. She respects the man who loves himself enough to have a standard. The rainbow after the storm. Love is not a battlefield, but it can destroy the unprepared. And that is why Machiavelli matters. He did not write about love. He wrote about survival. He did not teach men how to feel, but how to see. And in a world where so many are taught to chase the fantasy, his voice cuts through like a blade of clarity. Machiavelli understood one thing above all: people are unpredictable. Emotions are fleeting. Loyalty is rare. And those who build without wisdom are destined to watch their empires fall. This isn't about becoming cold. You don't need to be heartless to protect your heart. You don't need to be ruthless to love wisely. What you need is awareness. What you need is self-respect. What you need is a strategy. Because the goal is not to avoid love. The goal is to choose better. To choose with eyes open, heart steady, and mind sharp. To stop letting attraction dictate your destiny. To stop calling chaos chemistry. To stop handing your crown to anyone who smiles the right way. You are allowed to begin again. You are allowed to rewrite your story. You are allowed to say, I was blind, but now I see. It does not matter if you've made mistakes. We all have. What matters is that you now know the truth. That love, like leadership, demands discernment. That a man who governs himself well, his emotions, his boundaries, his standards, is a man no storm can break. So here you are, standing in the aftermath of old lessons. Maybe a little bruised, maybe still rebuilding, but stronger now, sharper, wiser. And in the distance, after the storm, there it is, the rainbow. Not the fantasy of a perfect woman, but the clarity of a better choice. The peace of knowing you'll never again lose yourself for someone else. So let me leave you with one final thought. If Niccolo Machiavelli were sitting across from you right now, with his cold eyes and calm voice. He wouldn't ask how many women you've loved. He would ask you one thing. The woman you choose, will she strengthen your kingdom or weaken it? Now look into yourself and answer that question like a man who rules.